Hello there. Welcome to our Friday night spiritual insights with Michael Mirdad. This is a wonderful broadcast that we do. We've done for, I don't know, it seems like a few years since this became available as a technology. So it's been nice to do this and share various topics with you all. Remember, there's a playlist on YouTube where you could go back and watch hundreds of topics. So we're going to talk about the 7 levels of consciousness, and or the 7 states of consciousness that we all have. Now, people are aware you have a conscious self, but there's a subconscious, and then on from there. There's a few levels for sure, but really there's 7 levels of consciousness, and they are symbolized in our 7 primary chakras. If chakra is a new term for you, it really means like vortex, spinning vortexes. It just means energy centers in our body. Now, people that are into or interested in or have a background in energy work would know about the 7 centers. People that are into yoga would know about the 7 centers. Acupuncture and energy work of whatever kind, you'd know about the 7 centers. People that meditate, chakras would not be that much of a foreign term. It's known, the chakras, they're known in Hinduism and Taoism and mysticism of the West. So these aren't ideas made up by me nor something recent. But the idea, if you think about it, it's kind of like on planet Earth when we think, let's just talk about in this country that I'm in, United States. It could be any country, but it's the same. But picture United States. You don't have a nuclear power plant in every house, but you have them here and there. Or it could be hydro, electric, like a dam. But, a nuclear power plant, you have so many of them in the country. And those power plants can generate energy for many households. So in your house, you have, let's say, your main power box. Outside, you have transformers, right? And then from the transformers to various electric companies, but it could be traced back to nuclear power plants. So your chakras are like your energy centers, your power plants. They're not the receptacle in your wall in which you plug your hairdryer or your toaster or whatever. It's too much. So chakras take care of regions the way power plants do. They take care of regions. So each chakra takes care of a region of the body, like the heart chakra is associated with the lungs as organs, but also each chakra correlates or corresponds to a gland, one of the endocrine glands. So the heart chakra is the thymus gland, but also the lungs. Then you drop one center down, and it would be the solar plexus, which connects to the adrenal glands, but also the stomach and organs in that area. So you could segment the body horizontally and say that the chakras or glands sort of correspond, generally speaking, in that horizontal direction. And then further up or further down would be other chakras or glands. So the human chakras are fed by qi. That's why Qigong as a practice, you find that in the Far East especially, becoming more and more popularized in the West. But Qigong is a practice that means developing your qi, developing your energy. So Qigong is this idea of conscious breathing, also movement to some degree, but conscious breathing. It's more focused on the breathing, the breath, than it is, say, the movement, as is Tai Chi or yoga. They're all very, very similar in some ways, but they are also very distinctly different. And Qigong is very different in its own sense because it's focusing on the breath, the qi, the power, just packing qi into the body. And it's very beautiful, very gentle, generally standing in one place with just, movements of the body that look like Tai Chi, but Tai Chi might be a little bit of movement from here to there. Yoga, standing in one place, but it's taking different positions. Qigong, generally, you're standing in one place. So it's not as active as much as yoga, which is not usually as active in terms of taking steps forward and sideways, like in Tai Chi, and on goes the analogy. So the chakras are our power centers. Now, what's important is that people start, the way pop things are, popularity, and taking chakras and making it kind of a pop thing. Oh, I met this person, and oh, my heart chakra just opened. It's fine. It's true. It can happen, but that's what they make it. Just that. How do I get my third eye to open? I want my crown to open. They don't generally understand. Everybody, there's not an understanding that all seven centers are supposed to be alive. But the seven centers aren't things that just happen to you. They respond to your consciousness. So your heart chakra never opens without you as a soul, being ready, prepared on some level to open your heart. It can't be done at you and to you. It's done as you and with you. So chakras are symbolic of states of consciousness. Now, I've done talks similar on this similar topic here and other programs, but it's very important to understand that if you didn't have root consciousness, you couldn't have a root chakra. If you don't have a crown consciousness, you can't have a crown chakra. The chakras are there to symbolize the energy consciousness behind them. So when you want your heart to open, start being more loving. When you want your crown to open, start thinking more divinely. If you want your root to open, then ground yourself. See, it's really simple in terms of saying it. Doing it's another story. If it was so easy, everybody would just understand, let's just open them all and be balanced and healthy. The idea with chakras, let's say that you're a being full of light. You're just this radiant being whose soul emanates light. Let's pretend for an infinite distance, but let's just pretend 100 yards, just to pick a number. And wow, like that's pretty bright, right? A mile, let's say. Wow, pretty bright. But then you and I incarnate and we put these body suits, they're more like body bags, but these body suits, and we zip them up and no light can get out of them. So picture this, to understand this metaphor. You started off as pure, perfect light, which is true how we started off with God. And then we fell, the metaphor found in the Garden of Eden story. But we fell, we separated, we thought we separated. We judged ourselves as imperfect in some way, and so on and so on. Whatever version of the story you want to use to understand this piece, let's just do it. We're separated, we're different, we lost full consciousness. And when that happened, it was like zipping up this body suit, in which no light can get out. So that means we went from being light to living in darkness. And that's why sleeping human beings live in that darkness. They don't have a bright aura because they're in the body suit. And they don't have chakras that are emanating a lot of light because it's zipped up and no light's getting out. The closest thing we know to light getting out of the body is through the eyes, because it's an opening, and we say the eyes are the window to the soul. So a person's eyes become the closest thing a body has to shining light, you could say, but also the light being perceived within a person, if there is any. A person who's, denser in consciousness, they might have beautiful eyes. So the eyes aren't really 100% accurate, because you can go, God, somebody who's shallow and materialistic could have beautiful eyes. Somebody who's very deep and very beautiful as a soul could have really tired eyes. And so, you can't really go by that. But generally speaking, once again, you could say, God, sometimes you look in someone's eyes and there's such love, such sincerity, such compassion. So I guess you could put it this way, that 70% of the time, perhaps, sometimes it could be more, but church bells. Sorry about that, folks. Hold on a second. I'm back. I should answer it, right? That's always kind of funny when I have my phone go off once in a while in old conferences, just for the heck of it. If somebody's phone rang, like now, it's always kind of embarrassing because eventually you forget your phone is here or there where you don't want it to be, and you forget to turn it off. So there would be a conference, and inevitably somebody's phone would ring, and people get kind of irritated, and then there's also people that are kind of going, the person with the phone gets all kind of embarrassed. So I just rolled with it and said, why don't you pass the phone up? And I'd get the phone and, hello, act like I'm, some man in some woman's, a lot of times the gals, in the conferences, act like I'm some man just waking up. And they would say, is my mom there, or is Mrs. So-and-so there? I go, I don't know, hold on, honey. And just, oh my God. Anyway, so I'm just telling you that because the phone ringing, it's a great story, but you're the ones who created the phone ringing, so it's your fault. So anyway, honestly, when we're looking at the bodysuit, no light gets out. The eyes give you some accuracy, sure. But at the same time, there's one other thing that's kind of an important piece here, and that is the idea of what chakras are like. It's a great analogy, is imagine that you could cut out or punch a hole in the bodysuit, 7 primaries, and then all that light that we already agreed when we started, that beams, let's say, a mile outward or 100 yards out, whatever amount you want to believe, this bright, radiant light that can beam out that far. I mean, greater than our typical lighthouses, let's say, because it's far greater than even that. It's beyond the sun's light is your real radiance. But imagine punch holes, boom, 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 7 primary holes. Those are your chakras. Now imagine this person in the bodysuit is no longer living in darkness. The more they grow spiritually, the more boom, 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 these centers are radiant. Now, when you're reading someone with energy, feeling with your hands or with your eyes, if you're reading someone, you kind of, or in just intuiting, you can kind of tune in and say, well, you can tell that the root chakra, on a 0 to 10 scale, let's say, what percentage is it up, or if you're using 0 to 100. But on a 0 to 10 scale, it looks like a 2. The next chakra, it's a 6. The next one, it's maybe a 3. The next one, so it's like that. That's when you read people, whether it's just a feeling or you see clairvoyantly, that's what it looks like. That the body bag, the body suit, the hole punched through it might not be as full, a big a hole so that more light can come out. You could use that analogy. So the chakras are supposed to all be in balance. Even though spiritual and new agey kind of people, they're like, oh, shut down the root chakra, let the crown radiate, and that's what's impressive is heart chakra. That's what they want to talk about. Heart, third eye, crown. They don't even talk about the throat center much, other than as victims. Oh, my throat chakra, my partner suppresses my throat center, so they even put a negative spin on that. They want to talk about a few centers that are convenient to them to make them seem very holy and wonderful, which is fine to have those centers radiant. But your goal is not actually to deny lower centers and just simply rip open the higher chakras holes, in the bag and get yourself to beam brighter. And that's why some people that are like that, they have a feeling or a sense that heart's big or their crown's big or whatever, and they wonder why your life might, or their life might be still challenged and messed up. And it is because the person is imbalanced. Well, I thought if my heart's open, everything's fine. No, not really. If your heart's open, if your crown is open, both of them, they could be radiant, 10, on each one, let's say, and third eye. But the other centers down below are closed off. It'll mean that you're probably empathic, probably very sensitive or hypersensitive, probably have visions, ideas, poems come to you, songs come to you, but your finances are probably screwed up and dating probably doesn't work out. You could have issues with sexuality, because that's not being grounded, and or emotional issues, or you could have trouble focusing if another chakra down, in the lower 3 chakras is off. So you want balance. I mean, we all really want to experience the presence of God in all aspects of our being. And it's not done by making the centers grow brighter. It's a matter of consciousness. So your centers, chakras, reflect your levels of consciousness. Heart is a consciousness, not just a chakra. Root is a consciousness, not just a chakra. And so to be the presence of God, to be a God and goddess while here on earth, then our goal is to just thrive and be in balance, all our centers radiant. And it is doable, it is possible. And that's, that's what I call mastery. Someone that can do something, grounded, physical. You got to do this, you got to do that. You got to get in your body. I saw someone today that was struggling with some sexual abuse. And they said, "Are you Michael Mirdad?" I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "Oh, hi," when I first met them or introduced or whatever. And so they didn't know me other than maybe slightly. And they weren't scheduled for a session. I just bumped into them, but they were struggling. And I said, "Nice to meet you." And I went to hug them, and there was this kind of fear, which is amazing because people that know me wouldn't have that fear. But a person who doesn't know goes back to that primal level of reaction. Then it wasn't major, but I could just sense it. And I said, "Actually, if you don't mind, instead of giving me a hug, I'm going to turn around." And then you hug me with facing. And it was like there was a little giggle, and it helped them lighten up a bit. But there was a giggle, but there was "Oh, okay," a total shift. What was I doing with that? I said, "Now I'm going to turn around and hug me." And they went to hug me. And I said, no, squeeze me. Like squeeze, ground. See what I'm doing is I was getting her grounded. Come on, squeeze as hard as you can. She could put her arms around, which is an intimate thing, helping a person who's struggling with the topic that's been abused. She's doing something that's intimate. It wasn't about affection. It was intimate, though. You're holding somebody you don't know. You're hugging a man, if you're a young girl like this. And then I said, squeeze hard. It's like, it's distracting to the ego mind that wants to categorize it to be something of a good or bad or up or down. And instead, it's like confusing to the ego. What's this about? We haven't had this before. What's that? And it was flying under the radar and finding a way to let them feel safe to hug, but also to laugh slightly, but also to ground. So grounding can be, going for a walk, but it's not like speed walking where you're spacing out and just kind of go, manic or frenetic walking, nor is it like walking real slow and, oh, look at the butterflies. That's kind of spacing still. It's best if you struggle with lack of groundedness to do some stairs, because we need to get your legs engaged, your legs that are sprouting off of the pelvis where your root chakra is. So those are roots going down into the ground. So we want to get some energy into them. If you take a tree or a plant, you plant it in the ground or in a little pot, it can't go anywhere at first. So you need to have soil that's broken up a bit so the roots can make their way through. So we need to get those legs moving, working, so that the roots can build and develop. Literally the muscles, but it's also about blood flow. But it's also about consciousness. How can I get your or my root chakra to say, I'm safe here, man. I'm going to show up. That's the warrior, the spiritual warrior. Spiritual warrior means someone that's tuned into spirit, but able to do things. Show up, get here, the hug, or it could be breaking up ground while you're gardening, or it can be working your legs, as you're exercising, whatever. The idea is it's got to have that oomph to it. It can't be like this, drumming. Certain foods, below ground vegetables that grow underground, earthy, red meats. And don't start with me on that and say, oh, I can't do it. That's the problem, guys. I'm not saying force yourself to eat them if you can't, but do something earthy. If you can't do red meats, I don't know what are the most popular red meats for most of y'all. And I don't mean bird, pheasant or whatever. I've not ever had pheasant or bird of any kind, but remember, though they fly, we want four-legged type creatures on the earth, ground, red, which is root chakra color, meat, which is carnivorous. And it gets your teeth grinding and really working because that's earthy. Now, I'm not saying be carnivorous to extreme. I'm not saying be dense or aggression oriented, but just show up here. be here. And if you can't or don't want to or whatever, or do red meats, I guess that's steak. I've never had steak, but people tend to like it, I guess. And I'm not saying have that. I'm saying something. If you can't do red meats, do below ground veggies. Do something earthy, and it's even colors around you, rusts and earth tones, a little bit more into your life so that you're just feeling and seeing a reflection back to yourself of ground yourself, reminders. And music that's got a little more beat to it, a little more thump to it. It could be rap, but because that's got that thump beat to it. But it could just be a good, rock. Just got a nice, or it could be native-ish, African or Native American, that's got a nice kind of a beat to it. And of course, dancing, not twirling and spacing dancing. I'm talking about good primal form of dancing. It sounds like I'm emphasizing one topic, but that's because we're on one chakra. And I'm not going to do that with each center, but I'm just saying these are examples. My book, The 7 Initiations on the Spiritual Path, kind of goes into a bit more of the kinds of things to do or study or practice or whatever for each chakra. But what a lot of people don't know is there's your first root chakra, second navel, third solar plexus, fourth heart. But then there's 3 more chakras, but technically, there are 3 technically. But you could honestly say that those 3 act as one, which is why you have 4 fingers representing the 4 lower chakras, and then a very different extra finger, the thumb, representing the 5th element, earth, water, fire, air, ether, the 5th element. And it's also earth, water, fire, air, and then the 5th chakra. All 3 of the upper centers are collectively one. In the 7 Initiations book that I wrote, I talk about how those 3 are slightly different from each other. And I'm using the context of dealing with life's tests. That's why the subtitle of that book is Understanding the Purpose to Life's Tests. Because people think things are just happening arbitrarily, or they think it's coming from the stars, or they think it's coming from God, or fate, or whatever. Not at all. I am not only on a spiritual journey, I am a spiritual journey until the day I completely wake up. I being any of us. So we're on a journey without distance to a place we never left. We're part of God. That's the good news. To a place we never left. We're part of God. We remain part of God. We always will be part of God. That's the great or good news. The bad news is it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't seem like it. That's not what I see with my senses. And that's because my senses are typically hijacked by my ego. My ego has hijacked my consciousness and my soul, and it's convinced my soul that it's better to, rule on earth than to serve in heaven, you could say. The ego has convinced us that it's better to go into the earth plane and not take responsibility and not try to be a divine being. Just be a grunt getting by. That's what the ego tries to tell us to do. And sadly, it gets away with that piece of advice for various reasons I can't go into right now. But understand the purpose of life's tests are simply this. First of all, there is no purpose because you're divine, we're all divine, and just dreaming that we're here going through tests. But while we're here, there is a purpose to life's test. Primarily one purpose. Like any test you took when you were in first grade or when you were college, in college. Every test has a purpose. It's to integrate what you've studied to make sure you got it, integrating what you've studied so that you can graduate to the next level. It's exactly what it's about on earth. But humans don't even realize that. They end up being set back, like having to do first grade 50 times. And that's called relationships that we don't see the purpose of. It's, that metaphor could be applied to how many marriages or how many different jobs or how many times, something got to us emotionally and it didn't need to. So we're supposed to be graduating regularly from our tests, our certain level of consciousness. What you don't want to believe is that it's first level, second level, like you're going up and you leave the other behind and you go up to the seventh chakra and then you're divine. That's not actually how it works. What has to happen is all levels, like I said, fully bright, and your consciousness is fully present. Now, to some of you, you go, okay, this is great, and because I like living a spiritual life. But then there's others that are like, I have an accounting job or I have a construction job. I go to work. It's hard to kind of remember all this, and it may be, and you can still do cute and wonderful little things. You can put a little chakra picture on your desk, or you can play nicer music, so that you're bringing God with you, anchoring, tethering spiritual things and consciousness with you wherever you go. So you can still do that. You can play things on your CD player in your car or whatever. So there's things, or off your phone or whatever. So there's things you can do to kind of tether that. But at the end of the day, it's really still going to come back to, are you living this? And so it's really, how much do I love? My lessons are my human learning to wake up to my soul, and my soul's learning to wake up to my divine or spiritual self. But how much have I learned? How much have I integrated? And that'll be known by how much I love and how much I forgive. Love and forgiveness. That's right, why I wrote a book called The Book of Love and Forgiveness. A simple, clear, easy read, just get to it. It's all about love and forgiveness. And that's my thinnest book of all my books, because I wanted to emphasize a point, that it is not complicated. A few important things to practice regularly when it comes to practicing love and forgiveness. Love is what we are and who we are. So I need to remember that. Well, how am I going to remember? Because Michael Mirdad will tell you in a lecture, or you'll tell somebody because you're their mother or father. Those things are helpful. They really are. But I have to also tell myself. I have to remember to live the Christ life. Tell myself, live the masterful life. Tell myself, I am as God created me. These things don't have quite the power I thought. Somebody's cutting you off on the road and rude and whatever. My forgiveness will actually bring peace to that person if I can manage to forgive them. Not overlook what they did, their badness, overlook their badness. That emphasizes that they're bad and you need to forgive it. What you're trying to do is recognize they know not what they do. If people behave that way, it's only because they're in a state of ignorance, as Buddha puts it, or as another would put it, they know not what they do. They're afraid. They're just afraid. There's a great movie. It's really pretty powerful and beautiful in a lot of ways, called Powder. Many of you have seen it. But one of the most brilliant comments in there is, this girl says, you're different, and everybody knows you're different. Are you really able to read people's minds? Yeah. And know what they're feeling, And she says, well, what are they thinking? He says, mostly they're afraid. This is a guy who's able to read everyone, like I do, like you do, some of you, we can read. But his point was, he wasn't tuning into them in terms of colors and chakras and whatever. He was talking about the deep psychology of people, but really the psychosis of people. And he was saying they're mostly afraid. Afraid of what? That they're separate. It's a brilliant line to put in a movie made that long ago. It wasn't that long ago, but it's probably in the 90s. That they're afraid that they're separate. Well, that's the point. Jesus, Buddha, you, me, we're telling people, teaching people, you're just afraid because you think you're separate. Now, my style is not to walk around saying, you think you're separate, you think you're separate, you think, and hitting people with that. It's more, for me, it's more to do the opposite. Instead of telling them they're separate, I actually just teach how to bridge, which is the opposite of separation. Teach people how to reconnect. How? Well, understand where they're coming from, or try to imagine how they're feeling, or, things along those lines. So when you want your consciousness to raise, your soul is already bright light. You don't have to actually fix your soul per se. You have to heal the misperceptions in your soul. But your soul is already radiant light, and your divinity is beyond even that. Your soul is a reflection of your divinity, and then your human self is a reflection of the soul. So if my divine self is perfect, how did I get so screwed up sitting here? Where did it go wrong? It went wrong in the soul, where my beliefs are held, where my thinking also takes place. So my divine is perfect, my body is not. What happened? My soul. So my soul needs some healing. And the greatest thing you can do to heal, there's not a physical thing you take to fix your soul. It's love and forgiveness. Love restoreth my soul. It brings my heart and soul back to who I am as a soul. And forgiveness helps kind of wash away all else, all that seems different or contrary to the soul self. So we're already radiant beings on a soul level. We zipped up these bags or bodies, and things seem so dark and bleak. But the zipping up of the bag or body means I judged. When I judged, I created a veil, the bag, between the skin or whatever, the density between spirit and matter. So just, keep this in mind, and I'll start wrapping up now. But keep this in mind, because that spirit, that soul self, is beautiful light. But hole punch, and there's now, how you doing? So imagine that this is a test where you say, oh, I'm so spiritual and whatever, and somebody says, really? Well, let's punch, and let's see how you're shining. And if there's just a bit of light in here and you go, see, I told you, how's the rest doing? Dark, bleak. That's not actually it. So how do you rate yourself in the 5, if you count this as 1, categories, or 7 categories? But it's easier to summarize these as 1. How are you doing physically, emotionally, intellectually, intuitively, and spiritually? And, see where it goes from there. Oh, I'm a really nice person. Great, big deal. And then what? You're nice. Did you remember to eat today? Oh, no, I was just so spaced out. Then don't tell me that you are love. Because if you're love, you'll love yourself enough to remember to eat and feed the body that you think you have for now. Have you talked to your partner lately? Well, no, we're mad at each other. Well, radiant balance doesn't keep it that way. Talk, communicate. Or they're just not really big on talking. Well, great. Then you say, guess what? Not that you'd use this analogy, but it's like, guess what? I punched a hole in my emotional center, and there wasn't any light coming out. It was bleeding, or whatever. This is going to change. I want light to replace what was coming out of this, and I want there to be light shining. And how beautiful it becomes. And those chakras, by the way, on an energy level, those chakras are actually, there's meridians you have, acupuncture-like meridians running through your system. And those meridians are fed by those chakras. So that's what I meant when we started a while ago. The chakras feed the energy meridians. The energy meridians go to your organs and bring them life. You cut off circulation, energetic meridian, vein-like streams of energy. If you cut those off, an organ would suffer. So even physical tensions in musculature, or misalignments in your spine, or whatever, those can pinch off the energy flows to organs and so forth. So, it's really important that on all levels we live a nice, balanced, and healthy life. Spiritually, what's most important is make your spiritual commitment to connecting with God. But on a human level, connect with God and then bring it fully. So I want to connect spiritually in the core of my being, but I want it to come forward. Even if I'm radiant light, what good does it do if I got a zipped up self that doesn't radiate that light? Well, but at least inside I'm a good person. Well, it's not proven, and it doesn't do anybody any good. So come out to wherever you are. Where's your light? Where are you not shining light? And literally, it could be intellect is dim, emotion is high. Creativity could be high. But if intellect is low, you go, I'm just so creative. Wow, I'm so right brain. I'm so spiritual. No, tell me about your left brain too. Tell me how you show up and get your accounting right. Tell me how you think things through when you make a decision. Tell me how you follow through because you're a focused master, human being, a god and goddess. Gods and goddesses of fable, mythology, or reality. No matter which of those you think they are, or some other category of belief around mythology. In mythology, around gods and goddesses, you don't usually hear them being like, there's Athena, there's Thor, and then there's Dopey, you know, you don't usually hear of that as a god goddess. They typically, to have a god goddess title, there's a certain amount of to them. There's like a presence that, you know, they show up. And you too, and all of us have to find that ability to be balanced. Um, the king, warrior, magician, and lover, or the female equivalent. Nice and balanced, nice and balanced. Showing up on all levels possible. You can't obsess on it and make yourself show up. It needs to be that there's so much love within you that you want it to shine on all levels. I want it to shine on a physical level. I think I'm going to do something today where I'm going to, you know, whatever it happens to be, chop wood, you know, or give the dog a bath or something, you know, just something in your body. And horse riding, by the way, is another common way to get in your body or to get grounded. You're using, for the most part, the largest available animal that you can sit on, and horses very much respond to every thought and feeling, every thought inside of you. They can respond. They know when you're doubting. They know, you know, it's amazing because there's this connection, such sensitivity. Their hooves are on the ground, but they're like antenna, man, and there's such sensitivity. They can feel every nuance of muscle that you don't even know that you're moving or adjusting in your body. But horses, that's why horse therapy can be really good, because children that are struggling, or adults struggling with special needs, whether it's autism or whatever, special needs, they do, you know, horse therapy for these people. And the amazing results, if nothing else, during the therapy, you know, the equine kind of you know, movements, a horse whisper, whatever you're using, something along these lines that they bridge, and the person on, even with special needs, it could just be a person with anxiety for that matter, but somebody with struggling on some level, emotionally or mentally, they put them on these animals and they move them around and do these things with them. And there's results, but one result, especially with special needs or autism, is because there's a lack of, the soul has come into such a person and didn't completely stitch itself in. It didn't completely lock in. So it's off a little bit. Its mind is disconnected from the nervous system. The nervous system is disconnected from the energy system. So it's just off a little, which is fine. It's fine, because that too is a group of people like any other group of us. It has its own lessons to experience and its own to give us. So, but something like that. And so the horse is like locking it all in. It's like making them show up, and there's like a beautiful, almost instant results many of the times, because something's happening that nobody understands that it's happening. Some will just go, oh, you know, let's say it's a child. Oh, the child just loves the horse. Or they'll say the horse is just so loving, and you'll give all these nice poetic reasons for it. Nobody really understands that what's happening is the animal that is, it's acting as like a surrogate root center for the person. So it's wonderful. And it's almost like taking a person who, you know, we know different people in the world that have had this, but where they have a voice box, they can't speak, but the voice box can simulate their thoughts or their words or whatever. It's kind of like that. The animal becomes this surrogate and plugs them in, even if it's only temporarily, or if it's in micro doses, it works. So, emotional center, the same thing. Family of origin issue, emotional issues, desire, all our psychic abilities and so on, sensitivities, that's all the second center, the navel center, the fire center, the solar plexus, that's the mind, the nervous system firing, neurons and synapse, and you know, that's the mind. It's still an emotional center as well, but it's mostly the lower mind, the thinker. And you know, that also involves willpower and focus and organization and so on. Those details, greater details, are mentioned in that 7 Initiations book of mine if you're interested. And the fourth center, of course, creativity, love, compassion, forgiveness, so on and so on. So the heart center, humanitarianism, it's beautiful, the heart. You know, It's beautiful, but it's far more real and active if it's got its brothers and sisters, the other centers, also active. Even your heart doesn't want to be the only guy working, the only center working out of the whole system. You might think you want to just be that center, but your heart's not even happy with that idea, especially since the heart's about wholeness in a sense, and you're not being whole at all. So then the spiritual Trinity, and that's why the upper three are kind of connected, because they symbolize the Trinity of God. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The Son, meaning the Christ self, is the throat center. We are the spoken word of God, and we create with our spoken word. So that's your Christ center. And then there's the Father and Mother with the crown and the third eye, the pineal and pituitary glands. So we're looking for these upper three. That's the presence of God. Just know that they are alive and active in your life, and that they're bringing you this Christ presence down into your life. I did a talk somewhere. You can look at the playlist, but it probably if you're looking for the categories, it's probably under Christ consciousness, because I talked about how the thyroid gland is connected to our Christ self, the thyroid, and how the thyroid is trying to send a message to the rest of our centers. It's trying to talk to the rest down here. And if your throat center is psychologically, spiritually, or in any sense, even physically constricted or cut off, you can't send a message of life to the rest of your body, so your other glands and organs start to suffer. And so a lot of people struggle with illnesses that they don't understand, and medical science doesn't understand, because they're not coming from a spiritual place. So just something to consider. All right. Once a year I do a course on developing Christ consciousness every fall, and you're welcome to join us in a 4-day intensive, online or in person, whichever, and you're welcome to join us for that. But we're doing a course right now, a whole year, on developing spiritual consciousness. It's a course in Christ, it's a course in spiritual awakening, and we use a lot of Course in Miracles and so on. It's all year, so you can join us in that at any time. But also I'm going to be doing a workshop this month, the end of this month, which is March, on basically navigating the spiritual path. A lot about what we're talking about here, because which chakras are up and down are my lessons. My soul is going to send me to these places to learn lessons. In other words, things don't happen arbitrarily. If I'm having certain things happen in my life, they're one chakra or another. My soul trying to get one or another of these centers to be healthy, activated, healed, balanced, etc. So just imagine seeing life differently now as we're going to close. Imagine seeing everything differently. What if? Just try a what if exercise when we disconnect here. Sit down and quiet for a minute and just what if? What if things don't happen arbitrarily? And what if it's not God doing to me? It's not fate. It's not the stars. What if my soul is the guy behind the things that are happening? And my soul is so intelligent, it's signing me up for lessons. Either easy lessons or hard lessons, but lessons nevertheless, for one goal and one goal only: graduation to higher consciousness. So when you have physical oriented things going on, that means your soul assigned you for physical lessons. When you have, it's certain schools or certain physical, phys ed, in school, they sometimes tested you in different things. Or even when you went to math, they might have tested you to see what level math you're going to do, like in school. Your soul is saying, how are we doing? And it figures out you need some work with relationship, time for an emotional chakra level of consciousness training. It really is like that. It's really much more intelligent, guided, conscious choice behind it all. It's not really happenstance. And more people are going to need to know that. We're never going to be done on earth until more people understand that. So it'll help, everyone, if you and I can make that shift, can bring that level of consciousness to people, starting with ourselves. Alrighty? I pray this has worked for you. So thank you for your time. We'll see you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.